All right.
Okay. So you've said that one of your moral axioms is that pain is bad, and so we should work to eliminate unnecessary suffering. Isn't this the basis for a secular morality like utilitarianism? And can't we therefore be moral without religion?
Well, I don't think that it's, first of all, probably to the first question, but that's also, that derivation is predicated on the idea that that's the only idea, that I'm putting forward as an ethical idea, and it's not. If that was the only idea, well, then you could derive from that a fairly straightforward brand of utilitarianism. But also, I think, to push the argument in that direction also necessitates the reduction of what might constitute pain to something too unidimensional, because I think suffering is a better term than pain, although pain in some sense is at the core of suffering. Suffering is a multidimensional phenomena, and I don't think that you can draw a simple utilitarian argument from that either the existence of suffering or the observation that it's the reduction of unnecessary suffering might be a good thing. So I'm also leery of those. See, it's not reasonable in some sense to reduce a complex set of ideas to a single proposition, and then say the ideas that I've been putting forward, and then to reduce another complex philosophical set of ideas to a single proposition, and then say, aren't those two things the same? And they are once you reduce them to the two simple axioms, or you could argue that they're the same, but I would say there's a tremendous amount left out in the telling, and that what's left out is relevant. It kind of reminds me of those philosophical games that psychologists often play. It's like, well, if there was, I think what's the one, I don't know if I can recall this properly. It's the trolley cart problem. It's something like, if there was a train that was out of control and it was going towards 6 people on one track, would you flip a switch so it switched tracks and only killed one person? Would you do that? And I read a question like that and I think, that's a stupid question. And the reason I think that is because you can't take a situation like that and render it properly by reducing it to that question. And then you also can't assume that the person who answers that question would in fact act in the way they answered. You can't presume any of that. It's like, because in a situation like that, in a high stress situation like that, the devil is in the details. And I've dealt with situations like that a number of times and know perfectly well that the devil's in the details. So I think that there's an intellectual reduction to make a philosophical point that doesn't give the complexity of the topic justice. And then there was a second part to that, which was, and therefore can't we be moral without religion? Well, I would say that question also suffers in some sense from the same problem of formulation. I'm very hesitant ever to answer a question of the form, is A merely a manifestation of B, when A and B are very complex things? Because the answer to that is, it depends on what you mean by moral and what you mean by religious. Because, see, there's an underlying intellectual maneuver in a question like that. And the underlying maneuver is the a priori assumption that something as complex as religion or as complex as morality can be reduced to an object with a name. And that then two objects reduced to their name can be assessed simultaneously. And I don't think that that's the case. I think you can say something like, is a triangle a square? I think you can say that. But I don't think you can say, is it possible to have morality without religion? I don't think you can have that question, because it has to be expanded out. So it's like, what do you mean by morality exactly? And what do you mean by religion? Because maybe and maybe not. And so the answer to that question is to decompose the question.